Hey, you ever wondered how to make a repeating pattern that just goes on forever and ever? Just a tile that you could do whatever you want with? In this video, I'm gonna show you how to do it. When I first learned how to make patterns, I couldn't stop. I made so many patterns. It was like this unlock superpower thing where you could just do some random stuff that was just whatever on its own, but then when you made it into a repeating pattern, it was just like, whoa, look at this is cool, because it's infinity. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. If we look into my second book, Another 1,000 Days of Drawing, there's literally a whole section of patterns in here where it's just non-stop. Look at them all. In Nickelodeon headquarters, there are patterns I made on furniture there and wallpaper. That is crazy to me. Little baby Chris would not have believed that. I made custom patterns for my packaging that I ship things in, my desk mat, more packaging. You ever seen this one? That's the stuff I ship orders in. What about this one? I got curtains with this pattern and these envelopes. These weird drawings of cars and made this. Does that work? We got patterns everywhere. Patterns are fun. I like to make patterns. In this video, I'm gonna show you how to do it. I'm gonna show you a couple different ways to do it. One is a little bit of a longer process, but I'm gonna show you some pro tips along the way that'll help make it a little bit easier. I'm gonna show you another process that streamlines a lot of it and sort of automates the process for you, which is pretty cool. I don't know, I guess we should just get into it. Let's make some patterns. So because a pattern is filled with lots of stuff, the first step in the process for me is to just brainstorm a lot of ideas and just start drawing, coming up with different ideas for things that could go into the pattern. I'm gonna do a spooky Halloween pattern because it's October as I'm filming this, and there's a lot of fun content for Halloween. I don't have to do too much brainstorming because it's all living in my head anyway. So I just start doodling, I start drawing, start brainstorming, just starting to come up with things and get them on the page. When I'm doing a pattern, I know that I'm gonna want to fit things tightly together like a puzzle, just so it sort of fills the space nicely. So I'll try to make a variety of things that are, you know, maybe bigger things, but also small things, some things that are more flexible or narrow that can fit into tight little spaces. For example, if we're doing a Halloween pattern, maybe there's some rogue eyeballs. A rogue eyeball is perfect for fitting into a tight spot because one, it's small, and two, we can have those like eyeball, are they veins? The tubes that connect the eyeballs? And we could wiggle those into spaces to fill the area. What are those eyeball things called? No, not the eyeballs, like the, you know if you yank an eyeball out and then there's like the things that dangle, the danglies, eyeball dangles? Basically, you want a variety of shapes and sizes to make your life easier in the next part. So I got this page here filled with random Halloween things that came to my mind. Got a witch, I got an angry candy corn. He's giving us the finger. My thought was that everyone hates candy corn. And he's like, hey, why is everyone hating me? We got the creature from the Black Lagoon, is that what it's called? Old horror movie? We've got a lollipop that's a vampire. You know, like when you unwrap it, I was thinking that made like a thing, like a vampire. We got a vampire too on there. We got two vampires. We got a vampire lollipop and a vampire. Maybe the vampire should be eating the vampire lollipop.
Maybe that's how the lollipop became a vampire. A vampire ate.
We got ghost, little pumpkins, little skulls. We've got a guy with a pumpkin head. We've got a pumpkin bucket filled with eyeballs. See, and then I put an eyeball next to it with the stringy thing. Maybe we can move that around as needed. Bunch of scary cats, spider webs, spiders, Frankenstein, bats. Bats will be good to fit into spaces. All kinds of stuff for me to sort of pick from when assembling the pattern. Okay, so now that we have all of these elements ready to go, the next step is to actually start making the pattern. As you're getting started, I recommend starting with a square document that'll just take some of the guesswork out of the equation, because there's little things that can go wrong as you're making patterns, and this will just simplify things right off the bat. But it doesn't have to be a square to make patterns. We're gonna try to fill the interior of this square without touching any of the sides. Pro tip is to try to assemble your elements in a diamond shape, because when we chop this up to make it into a repeatable tile, the space that's gonna be left over that we're gonna have to fill in with other stuff is gonna be similar and easier to use. Whereas if you sort of are a little bit more willy-nilly and take up all the space and then chop that up, you're gonna be tasked with filling spaces that are a little bit harder to fill. All right, so now I'll just come back to this archive of stuff that I made and just grab something, copy and paste it over to a new layer, tighten it up a little bit if it needs to be tightened up, or I'll just paste it in there, and then go and find something else that I can put next to it. I'm looking for things that sort of pair nice together, fit together like a puzzle. I know I've said that a few times, but I like to keep my patterns kind of tight, then just flow together. For example, here, I felt like the curve of the ghost with that hand coming up sort of fit nicely on the side of the witch and sort of reflected the hair coming off the side of the witch. And then I can just redraw this a little bit and kind of fine tune it to fit that space so that it feels even tighter and meant to be next to each other. Did the same thing here with Dracula, or this vampire. That little point from his cloak sort of fit nicely into that little space, and then I'm just sort of widening it a little bit to just have it all fit together. These are the kind of tweaks I'm making. It's not just to refine the drawing itself, it's to like refine the drawing to work better within the pattern. You could be looking at this and say, hey, I want to make a pattern, but I don't need it to be this tight. You don't have to keep it this tight. It's still going to work as a pattern if it's not this tight. This is just what I like to do. So take it however you will and do what you want with it. It doesn't have to be tight like this. It could be a looser, spacier, more spatial. You may have noticed on some of these I've been playing around with the symmetry tool because, I don't know, it feels like some of these, like the vampire and like the witch, some of these monsters give me like a Halloween mask vibe, and I'm trying to go with that vintage style. So I felt like using the symmetry sort of played up that mask idea and like style. So fun way to use it. Candy corn guy fits nicely right here, tucked on the side of the witch. His arm up, mirroring the witch hair. So I'll just keep going like this, grabbing pieces, pulling them in there until I get a sort of a jumble that I feel like is working together. You'll see I make little tweaks where I move things around to sort of fit the space, just like I did before. We've got that rogue eyeball that fell out of the pumpkin bucket. Scooch that over into the little negative space formed by the witch hat folding over. Just all coming together nicely. Little skulls are always a nice handy item to stick into some spots. You can adjust the teeth as necessary. You could use the skull without the jaw like I did here to work into your zone. And then sometimes I'll just draw in some new things. Like you don't have to just stick to what you drew in the sketch phase. For example, I thought we could use some rogue eyeballs in between the witch and Dracula here, just because it's a tricky space to work with and the eye is perfect for that kind of thing. So I'll throw it in there. As I mentioned earlier, bats are nice because they're small and you can move them around to fit into spaces. They're also terrifying. I hate bats. I have a weird fear of rodents. You just put wings on one? Listen, I would rather be chased down by a mountain lion than like a gnarly rat. I don't know why. It's irrational, but that's what I'm dealing with. What kind of fears do you have? Let me know in the comments. Little spiders are great for this kind of thing because they got these pointy little legs and I can move them around to fit into the space. And there's 8 of them. 8 legs, 8 opportunities. That's what I always say. Spider webs as well. Not handy if you're not doing a spooky Halloween pattern, but if you are, you can put spider webs anywhere. You could be walking in the spider webs all day, leave a message and I'll call you back. An unlikely story, but does anyone even know who No Doubt is anymore? You might be sitting there watching me make this pattern and thinking, patterns seem fun, but like, could you like take this and, become like a surface designer and use it to make fabrics, maybe clothing? That leads me perfectly to letting you know that Skillshare is sponsoring this video. And on Skillshare, you can find everything that you would need to know about making patterns and learning about textile design and surface design and all kinds of stuff like that. Tons and tons of amazing classes on things like illustration, photography, video, design, productivity, music. There's everything out there. So much stuff. It's incredible. Let's go check it out right now and see, because I bet there's gonna be some gold nuggets on there. I'm just gonna come over here, search for classes, and I'm gonna type surface and pattern design. And look at this. We've got a learning path, which is a curated group of classes that the experts at Skillshare put together to just sort of help you to quickly level up your skill from maybe knowing nothing to being a super genius at the end. And did you know that I have my own classes on Skillshare? I don't have any pattern classes yet, but who knows, maybe that'll change. But I got some classes on Adobe Fresco, motion on animating in Adobe Fresco. I've got some lettering classes. Did you know it's actually the largest online learning platform for creatives? There's teachers on Skillshare that are just at the top of their game, making amazing stuff, and then also sharing the information with all of you. I love Skillshare. I'm happy to promote it. I'm happy to have classes on there. The first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Get started today. So now that I have all of the pieces for the center of this jumble illustrated and ready to go, I'm gonna add color because it's gonna be harder to color when it's broken up. You'll see what I'm talking about when we get there. When I'm doing patterns, I like to keep my color palette a little bit more minimal just because there's a lot going on. It's just jam-packed with stuff. And I don't wanna make any like weird focal points or anything like that because I want it to just feel like a pattern. It's not like a regular illustration. It's just like a seamless, repeating, endless thing. So I like it to feel balanced overall. So I'm leaning into this vintage Halloween thing, and I like to just start thinking about what colors I absolutely need for the illustration and then adding as I need to. Obviously it's Halloween, we've got pumpkins, we've got candy corn, we're gonna need some sort of orange. So I'm gonna go with this sort of slightly less saturated vintagey orange. Definitely gonna need a yellow for a lot of different things. Candy corn specifically, just slightly washed out yellow. And then because vintage vibe type situation, I'm gonna use a cream instead of a pure white. That'll just sort of make it look a little bit more retro, vintage, old. How many times have I said vintage? And then I think we could just use a couple more colors. We don't have to get too crazy. I'm thinking about a purple background. Definitely need a green, I think, for the witch. And then I think like a teal blue, just because I love it and I use it in everything. But I feel like it will really help to make the orange and the yellow pop. It goes with this, the aesthetic, vibe, style, retro, you know what I'm saying? I get asked a lot about how I pick colors, and although it feels very willy-nilly to me, when I do actually think about it, there's a lot of stuff going on up in the noggin up here, and a lot of like color theory ideas and stuff like that. I actually went ahead and made a color guide that walks through my process on choosing colors, and it comes with a whole bunch of different swatches. So if you're interested in that, it's in my shop. I didn't know I was gonna plug this product, but it's there. You can check it out. All right, I'm gonna color this in, just sort of spreading out the colors evenly throughout the whole thing, maybe adding in some little weird highlights that aren't as traditional, like putting some blue on the side of like the pumpkin, I think is gonna give that like old school, like an old screen printed Halloween decoration from like the 60s or 70s, something like that. I think it's gonna be cool. I'm just sort of being a little bit loose, a little bit playful, and just sort of limiting myself to this palette and using it as I can and figuring out a way to sort of evenly disperse the colors throughout the composition. Okay, so here's the middle part. It's all colored in. Looks pretty neat, right? The next step is a little bit of the magic part. This is where we take this thing and make it so it's repeatable infinitely, forever and ever and ever, as many times as you want. So to do this, we need to chop our composition into 4 quadrants, but we got to do it first vertically and second horizontally. So what I like to do first is come over to my guides over on the right and turn on grids, and then you'll see the spacing thing. I like to just pull that all the way up as far as it can go because I really just want that vertical guide right in the middle to use as a reference to where I'm going to make my selection. Then if you want, you can change the grid color, make it like magenta or something, and you can adjust the opacity however you want, whatever works best for you. So then I'll come down to my selection tool, I will grab the rectangle, and then I will make a selection from the left side all the way to that guide and all the way down. So I'm just selecting that vertical quadrant on the left, and then I'm gonna cut that. Now the part that I'm left with on the right, I'm just gonna go ahead and drag that all the way to the other edge so that it lines right up with the edge of the page. To make sure I don't accidentally move up or down, I'm gonna double tap the modifier button, and then this is gonna lock the axis as I'm dragging it. So I'll just pull it over and get it right to the edge. You can zoom in really far if you want. You can also turn on snapping in your grids area. And now that that is where it needs to be, we can go ahead and paste our other layer that we copied, and then we'll do the same thing but to the other side. So now both of our vertical quadrants are pushed to the edges, and the sides would duplicate now, because if you pasted this next to the other one, they would line up perfectly. So we're gonna do the same thing to the horizontal axes. cut and paste, and then move the bottom up to the top, and then paste, and move the top down to the bottom. We can merge this all together, and now we have our repeatable tile. We can go ahead and test this out by just duplicating this layer, turning off the other one, shrink it down, then duplicate it, move it over, and make sure it lines up on all sides, which it does. It's kind of magical, pretty great. So we can get rid of that, go back to our other one, and now we just need to fill in this space in the middle. And I do this the same way that I was doing the other part, where I'm just trying to fit things together and make it all fit together nicely. So I'll make a new layer so that if I mess something up, it's easier to control, but I'm just gonna grab things from the original set and just put them in here until it's full. I guess I'll time lapse this and I'll see you in a minute. If you have access to Photoshop, there's a much faster way to do this splitting up thing where you divide it into quadrants. I'm gonna show you how to do that real quick. So I opened up my file in Photoshop and I have all the inner parts of the pattern elements here. They're all in a group. I wanna keep them separate just in case something goes wrong. So instead of chopping this up, what I'm gonna do is duplicate this group, just like we did in Fresco. I'll turn off one of them, and then on the copy, I'm just gonna do Command E to flatten this into one image. So all we need to do now is use this filter called offset, which is gonna divide this up automatically. We just need to know exactly what our image size is so that we can get the half size of it. So just come up to image size. If you don't remember, you can check there. And you want this in pixels. So if it's showing up as a different size format, just change it to pixels. And this is 4000 by 4000 pixels. That is going to be very easy for this. So now we'll come over to filter, go all the way down to the bottom to other, and then it's the last one. It's called offset. And you'll see here we've got horizontal and vertical, and then there's a number next to it, and it's saying push pixels right or push pixels down. So what we need to put here for the number is half of the width and height of our image. So because our image is 4000 by 4000, we just need to change this to 2000 and 2000. And now you'll see this split it up exactly as it did in Fresco, but it did it immediately. So we can double check that it works properly by just going ahead and duplicating this layer, scale it down, duplicate that, drag this over, hold shift so it stays in a straight line, merge those together, duplicate that, drag those down, and you'll see that we've got a perfect repeating pattern. And we just have to do the middle part just like we would in Fresco. But if you have access to Photoshop, what I would recommend is just open up your file in Photoshop, split it up like this, and then save it, and then go back to Fresco, and it'll be there ready to go, and you can just draw in the middle stuff. And then you have your repeating tile. All right, so I got this all filled in now. It is just nice and tight. Feels like it was all planned to be together. You may have noticed some random things that I put in there, but that's another pro tip. Just put some weird little blobs and squiggles into the spaces. It's gonna make the pattern look better, and you can do whatever you want. It's your pattern, you can decide what's in there. For me, it made perfect sense because it's a Halloween pattern, so I'm like, oh, just put some splatters of goop or slime or whatever. It's Halloween, it could be anything. Got this little cauldron, is that what it's called? And some bubbles coming out of it. And then I just had to improvise some little things to fit some small spaces. Put a booger in the bottom, another candy corn. I think there's actually 2 more candy corns. Some just little candies were fun. A little razor blade. I don't know about you, but that was like a concern in my childhood that you had to be careful because you might find razor blades in your candy. I don't know, I remember the school sending home like a newsletter and being like, who's doing this? I used to also be really afraid that I was gonna sit on a needle in a movie theater. That was something that someone put in my head at some point. All throughout my childhood, whenever I sat down in a movie theater seat, I was like gonna sit on a needle. Anyway, this is my repeating pattern, and it's ready to go. Look at this. We can just duplicate it, and this is a tile. This can be used in however you want to make a repeating tile. It's ready. Isn't that fun? I love this about patterns. Any one of these drawings on their own, I'm not that crazy about, but when I put them all together as a pattern, it just feels like something that's pretty great. I feel like patterns always make things, mediocre drawings, better. Happy with the color palette, happy with how this turned out. And I got one more thing to share with you. Maybe you're thinking, hey, it's cool and all how tight you got this to be, but is there an easier way to do this? There is. There's an easier way to do it. You don't have as much control, probably not going to get it as tight, but it's pretty close. I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so this next step is Fresco specific, but it really streamlines this process quite a bit. So I'm back here to my original document before we split it up into the middle stuff. I'm just going to use this as the example. For this technique to work, we need each of our elements on their own separate layers. We can't have as many in this process because it's a little bit, you'll see. But I went ahead and just put all of these items on their own layer and merged them together when they had like separate color layers all together. Each of these elements on its own separate layer ready to go. So what we do is we go up to the top right to the export option, and then we will choose publish and export, and then second from the bottom, capture pattern. And when we tap on capture pattern, you will see this thing pop up where we can choose which layers we want to use in this pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and select all of my little spot illustrations, everything except the background color because we don't need that. And then it's going to bring us over to the Adobe Capture app. Now I don't know if you don't have Capture installed on your iPad if it would automatically download it or if this option wouldn't even show up. But if it doesn't, you can just download Capture. Capture is a free app, just like Fresco is, but even more so because there's not a paid version of Capture. You can do a lot of fun stuff with Capture. I've got some other videos about it. Maybe I'll remember to link them below. Anyway, to have the most control over this situation, you want to go to the properties on the right, and you want to change it from snap to grid to freeform grid, and this will let you fully control things. And then I like to change the shape to the hexagon just because I feel like it's easier to work with. And then you'll see all the stuff is just there. It's a little bit overlapping at this point, but you just tap on these things individually and then just size them and move them around, and you'll see it's automatically making this pattern happen. I don't know what this defaults to, but you'll see the option below that says dim preview. This is dimming the rest of the pattern. This is like the part that's repeating, and you're just controlling the main tile. So you can adjust that however you want. I like to keep it pretty low as I'm working and then turn it up to make sure everything looks good when it's fully repeating. So you'll notice that all of your objects aren't here, and you can go ahead and get them individually. Over on the left, you'll see the shapes option. You just see there, open that up, you'll see all the different things that you imported, and then you can just drag them into your composition and size them accordingly. So when I'm doing a pattern like this, I just fiddle around and just adjust things and move things around until I'm happy with the final result. Sometimes it's a little bit more tedious, but certainly faster than doing it the manual way. And sometimes it just works together nicely. And again, if you wanted a pattern that wasn't as crazy intricate like the ones that I make, this would be a much easier process. So I got everything arranged in a place that I'm happy with, and I'm gonna go ahead and set a background color. I'll bring my purple background back in, and then that's our pattern. I'm gonna bring the dim preview up all the way, and then we can see this whole thing as a pattern. I think it looks pretty good. It's actually better than I thought it would be for this process. And from here, we can just go ahead and export this pattern, then we can save it to our Creative Cloud library. And now, if we go into our library here, you'll see this pattern. We can zoom in and zoom out, infinity. You can export this as a tile. You can import it into Photoshop. You can import it into Illustrator. You can export it in a number of different ways, but this is ready to use. Pretty neat, huh? Oh, I remembered another pattern I made. I made this children's book a while back called The Salty Avocado, and I made this pattern with the characters as end pages for the book. This is when the avocado sneezes and knocks everyone over. There's the waffle. The waffle gets knocked onto the floor and thrown in the trash. This is devastating. I hope you have a ton of fun making patterns. You may have just seen what I was doing in Adobe Capture and been like, hey, that looks like there's a lot of fun stuff you can do in there. Did you know I used Capture to make my vector texture pack? You should check out this video here where I make all kinds of textures using organic materials and paints and inks and all kinds of stuff, and use the Capture app to turn those into vector textures. Pretty cool, huh? All right, it's been a good talk. Thank you again to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to use my link below to get a month free. I'll talk to you soon. Okay, bye.